The Great Shift of Land, The Great Segregation by Nefarious J.R. Bane. In the year 476 ACE, known to all as after the creation of Evernia, a great war unfurled across the breadth of the planet. What began as whispered rivalries among kindred peoples erupted into an unrelenting conflict that burned through the land like a tempest of fire and steel. It was no mortal feud, but a clash of bloodlines born from the divine. The combatants were none other than the 14 original tribes, the firstborn descendants of the deities, Ak'Nun, Ak'Awa, Ak'Ura, and Ak'Daro. Each tribe bore the mark of their divine parentage, their names spoken with awe across the realms: the Aganasta, the Ambagli, the Angulari, the Ancestry, the Sinofarses, the Dairasmo, the Daivero, the Deus Zeviateo, the Katima di Malsvir, the Meline, the Onyxio, the Sidius, the Snowdraka, the Stygianos. It was the courage, the cunning, and the unchecked greed of Ak'Daro's progeny that first set the spark which grew into feuds between the tribes. In the beginning, each had been shaped by divine hands with a singular purpose on the newborn world, a fragment of the balance meant to sustain Evernia's harmony. Yet that balance, delicate as spun glass, had been shattered. The Ancestry were the first to yield to the hunger of their bloodline. Ambition drove them higher than the station carved for them at creation. No longer content with their allotted dominion, they turned upon their neighbors, subduing them with ruthless precision. The Snowdraka, whose nature was more contemplative and cold as the glaciers from which they hailed, and the Meline, whose gentleness was sung of in forests and meadows alike, were seized and bound in chains. What should have been voices of peace became the voices of the enslaved. This act of tyranny did not go unnoticed. Across Emberia, the single great continent of Evernia, word spread like wildfire. The other tribes and clans gathered their strength, rallying behind the Snowdrakar and the Meline in a desperate attempt to shatter the Ancestry's dominion. Yet not all chose the path of justice. Some, blinded by arrogance or seduced by promises of power, bent the knee to the Ancestry and swore allegiance to their ways. Thus erupted the first true war of Evernia, a war not of borders but of spirit and blood. Battle lines were drawn, armies marched, and steel clashed with steel beneath the gaze of the heavens. But though numbers fell on both sides, no change came. The enslaved remained shackled, and the balance of the world groaned beneath the weight of endless slaughter. At last, word reached the ears of the 4 mothers of Ak, the goddesses who had birthed this first generation. Concerned, they gathered in council, their presence shaking the firmament. Their children were at war, and if left unchecked, the lifeblood of the planet itself would wither into dust. Ak'Nun, eldest and most steadfast, was the first to speak. With stern conviction, she urged her sisters to descend to Evernia, to demand a ceasefire in their own voices and restore order with divine authority. Ak'Awa, ever her ally in matters of harmony, gave her agreement. But Ak'Daro, ever cunning and ever cruel, raised her hand in dissent. She argued that the warring should be permitted to run its course, for in the furnace of strife, the strongest of their children would be revealed. Let fate choose, she declared, who among their progeny was worthy to endure. It was Ak'Ura, quiet until then, who offered another vision altogether. She saw no hope in ceasefires, no wisdom in endless bloodshed. Instead, she spoke of division as the only path to survival. To stop the warring on Evernia and preserve Emberia from ruin, their children must be torn apart, sundered into separate territories where their ambitions might be contained. Though their tempers clashed and their wills often stood at odds, it took nearly 50 long years of deliberation, before the four mothers reached a single, solemn accord. Division, they decreed, was the only means to end the endless wars of their children. In the ether beyond the stars floated the instrument of their judgment, a relic born of failure, yet brimming with divine purpose. Forged in the wombs of the Celestine dragons, it was a gargantuan stone, the stillborn husk of a dragon egg that had never quickened with life. The four mothers laid claim to this remnant of cosmic sorrow, and with their combined power, set it upon a terrible course. With a force that shook the heavens, they hurled the great asteroid toward Evernia. As it descended, the skies darkened. Day surrendered to premature night, and the stars trembled at its passing. The tribes and clans of Evernia gazed upward in horror, disbelief twisting into prayer. Some fell to their knees, crying out to the deities of Hylotia. Others whispered frantic pleas to their own divine mothers, begging for mercy, begging to be spared. But mercy was not what came. The moment of impact tore the world asunder. The asteroid struck with such force that the ley lines themselves convulsed, rippling with raw power. A shockwave erupted outward, unraveling the weave of the land. Volcanoes raged, vomiting fire into the heavens. The seas recoiled and surged with tsunamis that swallowed coasts whole. Winds became storms of ash and smoke, choking the breath from thousands. Mountains cracked and fell, forests blazed and cities crumbled. The continent of Evernia, once whole and vast, was riven apart. It shattered into 7 colossal masses, each one cast adrift from the others, carried by the fury of the planet's rebirth. These fragments drifted to every corner of Evernia, reshaping its face. Most of the tribes perished in that cataclysm. Mortals with no spark of divinity in their blood were consumed by fire, water, and stone. Yet those with divine essence coursing through their veins endured, though scarred and diminished. Survival itself became their inheritance. And thus the once great continent of Evernia was broken and remade into 7 sundered lands, each destined to become a realm unto itself. Altaria, Oronadva, Lunistra, Hika di Tobos, Melinaisia, Vita Eyunkuna, Aganuestra. It was upon these newly forged landmasses that fate entwined itself with the will of Odulis Mundis, and together they reshaped the destiny of Evernia's children. Those who had endured the cataclysm awoke to a world unrecognizable, its face scarred and remade by fire, ocean, and upheaval. The earth still trembled beneath their feet, the skies hung heavy with ash, and yet life pressed onward. From the shattered remnants of tribes and clans, the survivors learned to bend their will to this fresh-turned world. They carved homes into the mountains that had risen overnight, fished the new seas that surged where plains once stretched, and tilled soil enriched and blackened by molten fire. Trial and necessity became their teachers, and suffering was their constant companion. Yet within their veins burned the spark of divinity, and with that spark they endured. From these survivors, tempered by catastrophe and remade by hardship, arose the Tarama, the people who walk Evernia still, and whose voices carry the memory of gods, dragons, and shattered continents. They are the inheritors of both ruin and renewal, children of a world reborn in fire.